I think the GCC countries are as much as a divider as they are a uniter in the Horn of African countries. I think the positive examples that we've seen just recently is definitely the example of Eritrea and Ethiopia, where the UAE was very influential in actually bringing the two countries together and making the next steps for a regional change that will hopefully not only defreeze a war or conflict between Ethiopia and Eritrea, but will bring a stabilization for the whole region.
I think initially, because of the GCC crisis and the split with Qatar, that it was a real driver of tension between Eritrea and Ethiopia. But as Ethiopia has begun to move into the Emirati orbit and has improved its relations with the UAE, that the UAE has we think, this is a bit speculative, has been able to actually play a role in bridging the gap between Eritrea and Ethiopia and actually driving forward rapprochement between the two countries.
The UAE was able to leverage the good relations that it had with both countries in order to play a positive role that was already underway, sort of taking advantage of the momentum that was underway domestically within the Horn. So Ethiopia and Eritrea, two countries where the UAE particularly has a deep relationship. Let's again take them one at a time. Ethiopia, I think it's interesting, in Abu Dhabi, they very much see the new Prime Minister, Abiy, as someone who can be a constructive partner for them in the Horn of Africa. This is someone who clearly has a vision for reform, for economic diversification, for development, and this is someone that I think Abu Dhabi sees as a real partner for them in the region. I think, pairing along with that, the UAE also has commercial interests in seeing this economy develop. Again, this is one of the largest countries in the Horn of Africa, and so the opportunity for that economy to really take off is accelerated if Ethiopia can solve its problem of port access. Ethiopia, of course, has been landlocked since the conflict with Eritrea. So this leads us to Eritrea, a country that the UAE has had a strong and positive relationship with since around 2015, 2016, when the Yemen conflict opened up the opportunity to have a military base in Asab. The role of Saudi Arabia in all of this is also a little bit under-recognized. I think that despite the UAE sort of playing the more active and visible role, the Saudi engagement was also very important. Both the leaders of Ethiopia and Eritrea engaged with Riyadh during, before, and after the mediation process, which I think is indicative of the importance of both those countries increasingly in the Horn.
And this, I think, was an extremely positive example of the uniting role the Gulf countries played. I think in terms of the dividing role is what we've seen after the split in the GCC and, let's say, the pressure that was put on Horn of African countries to take sides. And I think this pressure was fragmenting many of these countries.
This has allowed rivalry from the GCC to spill over into the Horn of Africa region, and the UAE, particularly in a place like Somalia, has kind of been forced to sort of take one side of a particular dispute or conflict. In this side, in that context, with Somalia's federal member states,
but also in Sudan and Ethiopia, Eritrea, other countries, because these countries felt that they had to take sides between Qatar on the one side and then Saudi Arabia and the Emirates on the other side. But they are not strong enough and they are not united enough to basically carry through, because they do need both parts of the GCC. Let me give you an example on Sudan, for example, where it's becoming really a problem. Qatar was the main negotiator for the Darfur conflict between the government in Sudan and the Darfur rebels. But at the same time, Sudan's troops are fighting in the Yemen war, so they're siding with the Emirates and the Saudis.